target and haven't shown improvement. So obviously there's some focus there. And then we've got 14, which we've called not applicable because they're contextual measures. So they're in the council plan. We want to know what's going on in performance, but it's not something we can directly influence. So we haven't set a target, but as a council, we want to know what's going on. Down the bottom, you've got two sort of not quite pie charts, polo mints, whatever you want to call them. So the one on the right is showing you how our performance is compared Q3 this year compared to Q3 last year. So you can see there we've got 75% of measures are showing an improvement. The ring on the left is showing you what's Q3 this year look like compared to Q2 this year. And that's more relevant for where we've got things like snapshot indicators, where it's just a point in time. So again, what we're hoping to do, because obviously this is a new report and it's still developing in some aspects, that on that front page for the next quarter, we're probably going to try and drop in a little graphic that shows you about the projects that we've got, how they're performing. So you just got a little visual statistical summary on that front page. Then moving on. So what I've sort of manipulated here so that you can see each of the 4 types of measure on one page. So you will never see anything other than these 4 within the report. These are the summit of the options. So you've got a choice of red, amber, green or blue for a contextual measure. That's all you will ever see in the report. If you look at the current status column, so the big numbers in bold are basically our performance year to date. So we've got 10.21 days of sickness, 77% of council tax, 11 ASB cases open and 55.5% of market occupancy. Beneath that, you've got a smaller figure, and that's your target figure. You can see that's why for the blue measure, there is no target because it's a contextual measure. We haven't set one. And we've got 2 different sorts of targets, I guess. So we've got static targets, which is where you've got the straight horizontal line under markets, because the target is always 60%, no matter what stage of the year we're at. Whereas something like council tax collection, obviously that target builds as we get through the year and collect more council tax. So we've profiled that target. So at the end of the 3rd quarter, you can see we've said around about 3/4 of council tax should have been collected. So the target was 76 and we collected more than that. So all the things on the page to the right is pretty much what it says really on the tin: smart actions if we're off track. So any red or amber indicators will always have some narrative there for you to try and explain what's caused that performance issue and what are we doing about it. If it's green, we don't ask managers to populate that. But if it's a contextual measure, we felt that it would be a good idea to still have sort of some commentary around that so you can see what the wider picture is. Then to the left, this is where we get into the nitty gritty of the data really. So you've got 2 years worth of data so far. So it says FY, that's just telling you the financial year. The grey is 21-22, blue is this year, and orange, obviously the orange is the target line. As we build up more, and then you'll have more and more years to compare to. The time frame is just telling you underneath what sort of measure it is. So a lot of them will be what we call cumulative data. So obviously that picture is building and it's a year-to-date figure like council tax collection. But some of them will be what we call snapshot figures. So it's just performance at a point in time. It could be if we were measuring the number of rough sitters or rough sleepers, that would be one moment in time. And the ASB cases is as at the quarter end. On the left-hand side, sort of final element to explain really is just where it says low is good or high is good. That's just letting you know what sort of measure it is. You might have it referred to as polarity sometimes. So obviously we want to collect more council tax. We want sickness absence to be quite low. So it's just letting you know. But obviously the graphical visualization is already telling you that, because it's telling you whether it's red, amber, green. You don't really need to worry about that. And then also we're just telling you on the left hand side around what the trend is, so whether it's a negative yearly trend or a positive yearly trend. So are we doing better than we were this time last year? We've included in the Q3 report this little sort of aid memoir. It's entirely up to you whether you want us to keep it in for next quarter. It's just a little reminder basically of the things that I've gone through tonight. And we'll put that on the intranet page as well, so you can always refer back to it. And then the final thing, just want to touch on, obviously we've talked a lot about the indicators, but the other aspect is the projects and the actions. Again, we're using a RAG rating. It's perhaps not as bold as the others, but it's the little green arrows under the status report. So all these projects are on track. So the action tells you what it is we're trying to do. So the first one is obviously delivering a workforce strategy. The rest of the data is telling you which portfolio it sits under, which directorate is leading on it, how it links back to our objectives, and then what is the current status. So for this, everything's progressing as expected. If it was amber, then it would not be as expected. And it could be that with projects, it tends to be either the quality, the cost, or the time frame. So one of those aspects might need realigning. If it was red, then it would mean the project was in serious danger of not being completed. So we're hoping not to see any of those. And then once the projects are completed, it'll get turned blue. And then the final section, final column is just giving you the commentary on what progress we've made towards that. So it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but hopefully it's giving you some sort of clarity around where we're going with reports. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that. That was a very helpful introduction. If members have got the electronic version of the reports, all of the colours appear as described. If you are using one of the paper copies, I'm afraid they'll all look a little bit grey, but you should be able to tell from the textual information whether things are good or bad. So in terms of what we've just seen, does anyone have any questions for Vanessa about the report? Councillor Berry-Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, any target should be realistic, measurable, and achievable. And what I've seen from the document, that does appear to be the case. But I've got two questions. One is, how were the targets, indicators, whatever we call them, derived? And then the second point is, going forward, when we're always looking for continual improvement, which is fine, but it can actually be demotivating if people strive really hard to achieve a target, and then the target advances. I'm not saying the target shouldn't advance, because I've made the point we're all looking for continuous improvement, but at the same time, we have to ensure that staff remain motivated within this system to continue to strive for improvement. And it's very easy for staff to be demotivated if the target suddenly jumps when they've worked really hard to get there. So I've got just those two questions. Thank you.
If you'd be happy to answer that, I've then got a further question, I think, from Councillor Waring.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a very relevant question. Obviously, the target setting process is done in full consultation with heads of service. They're not imposed centrally. We've developed a new process on the back of the council plan, something called priority delivery plans, which are our 3-year plans, which are sort of the vehicle for delivering the council plan. And within that, we've asked all heads of service to set targets going forward over a 3-year period. So it's very much based on their resources and what they feel the team can deliver. The sort of quality assurance side from our point of view is understanding what the national picture looks like. So what is the benchmark for some of these services, and how do we compare? So our challenge back to them is, if the national picture says most councils are achieving this level, where are we in relation to that? So there's a bit of both, but it's certainly done in full consultation.
Thank you very much. Councillor, the second part of the question about staff motivation.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. Yes,
What we might do is hold that until
Oh,
we
right,
consider the
okay,
actual
fine.
report. So in terms of the presentation of it and the way in which that data is shown to us, it's the same report that goes to Cabinet, and it's a new way of showing that data. It's perfectly proper for us as a committee to be asking questions like, how do we choose which targets appear on this readout? Have we set the target at the right level so that it is challenging but not impossible to meet, rather than being, easily met every quarter, in which case it's not telling us anything useful, or too difficult for us ever to meet, in which case is it an appropriate and realistic target? So we can ask those sorts of questions, which we'll be doing for the first time at today's meeting, but at future meetings, now that we've all had the training on how to understand the report, I think it'd be a very good idea if we had to think before we come to the meeting what questions we'd like to ask. Councillor Waring, is your question about the presentation of the data?
I was going to make a comment about the presentation. I was going to say that I think it's really good. I think it's a big improvement on what we had before, but I've got certain comments to make in relation to the targets that Councillor Beckley-Smith said. So I'll speak on that afterwards. Thank you.
Fantastic. Again, if your comment is about the presentation, we'll take it now. Thank you, Councillor Lawley.
Firstly, I just want to say I think the move to Power BI is fantastic. I think it's a really good tool. I had two questions. One was, obviously at the moment we're on a PDF. At what point are we expecting to see that available in the intranet? And then the second question was, I'm assuming on the front sheet, they're just visualizations that are pulled through. Are we going to all have access and permissions to be able to click into them and drill down into the data itself?
Back to the point around targets as well. So obviously at the moment we are looking at refreshing the targets. So the intention, I think, is alongside the Q4 report, there'll be an extra appendix which shows you the targets that we're setting for 23-24. So that's obviously an opportunity for the committee to comment. I think we're also doing more in terms of motivation, making sure that we celebrate achievements. So that's another piece of work that's coming up in the spring. And the point around the interaction and the sort of the interrogation of it, we're hoping it's sort of imminent in terms of getting it on the intranet. We just need to make sure that you've all got the technical aspects in terms of your accounts to be able to get into Power BI. So that's just something we're just dotting the I's on and crossing the T's on. And yes, anything that's capable of getting down into, you will be able to do that and get into those areas and see the data.
Lovely. Happy with the answer? Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. I don't really have a question, but more comments about this chart. I read the agenda, the report this morning, and I fully understood it. It was, very clear. It sets out, it explains itself very easily, and I think this it's wonderful to see. Even the 2 points where we are in the red, we are only in the red by like 1 point on the, where is it, on the litter, and unfortunately the sickness is rife in any infrastructure or business. But I do applaud this this report, and the graphs and the details, and a lot of hard work has gone into it, not only by yourself but the members of the cabinet doing their bit to try and keep everything on target, and that I think it's really commendable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. I won't make you repeat that when we come to the part of the agenda where we look at the figures themselves. Having received that, then we'll consider the information that's in front of us. So before we move on to the exciting hieroglyphs and colours, there is the financial position for Q3 as a separate text document. Remember, this is Q3. These figures apply from September through December. We've moved on a little bit since then. We're now almost at the end of Q4. So before we move on to the colours and what have you, Councillor Tagg, do you have an introduction you'd like to make to both of the reports? So both the statement and the performance figures. and anything else you'd like to say.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I think just on the financial quarter report, as you've pointed out, is Q3, and it refers to the revenue position there, 72,000 variance. And of course, we are now reaching the end of the financial year, and it has reached a balanced figure. And of course, that will be reported when we have it'll be historic then when we have it on at your next meeting. I think this report, as per usual, comes to the committee. I think just the addition really on 6 and 6.1 is major project funding, where it gives some details there on those major projects that the council is taking forward, our drive to regenerate the town, etc., through the town deal funding and future high streets fund. And that came out, and the addition has come out of your last meeting when you scrutinised the budget. And I think that's hopefully members will find that informative and giving the latest position on those major projects, and be reassured that the officers, finance officers, and also the cabinet members are driving hard to ensure we meet what we said we're going to do, which is to regenerate our town, but also keep within the budgets, and also be aware of inflation and also other things, interest rates rising, etc., so we can deliver what we want to deliver. So that's the finance report. Do you wish me to take any questions on that, or come back to?
If it's convenient for you to take questions on that now, it's great to hear that from that adverse variance of 72,000, we are now heading towards balance at the end of the year. I think that's what we all needed to hear. But are there any other questions for the leader on the financial position Q3 report? No, in that case, we'll move on to the exciting new bells and whistles pictorial representation.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased the committee like the new indicator set and the way we presented them. And I think just to echo what Vanessa said, the idea of getting it onto the intranet, members intranet, with you able to drill down and to use the tabs, etc., will be really interesting for members. And using that new portal we've got will allow us to do that as members. I think you're quite right, Vanessa. We need to ensure that members can connect properly from the equipment which they have. But I think these indicators for Q3, end of December 2022, it shows an 80% measure of on track, which is really good, and 75% are show improvements from Q3 the previous year, if we want to measure ourselves year on year. And of course, as has been said, this is a new way of describing these indicators, but also they're more ambitious targets as well, as part of our new local plan, as we decided, as Councillor Batley-Smith said, to stretch ourselves to ensure we improve even further. And I think we can see that throughout this report, Chair. I think if we look at the planning indicators, for a long time now, they've been really good, and they continue to be really good on number of planning applications, minor or major, that are being put through the planning committee, which means we're putting things through for things to be developed and built, whether that's somebody's extension or whether that's a housing estate or something like that, which is good. I think when you look at the health and active safer communities, you can see that J2 membership is increased significantly. It's now back to where it was pre-COVID. Of course, all leisure centres were closed over COVID and members drifted away. But I think credit to the J2 team and to the portfolio for really getting those figures back up again. And then also the museum, extended museum. It's the centre of our celebrations for the 850 this year, and that's really gone from strength to strength since it's had its extension. And then really the town centre as well. I think that's you look at the indicators for that. It's looking really good. We don't have which I've just tried to find it on my computer, that sort of figure for the Q4, even though we're jumping ahead of ourselves. But I do know in February that there has been an 11% year-on-year increase in footfall in the town centre. So that's leading to shops having more business. We're actually getting more parking revenue because they're parking in town. So it means that our town centre, with its markets, with its shops, are doing well year on year. But as you can see, the indicator there is looking good. So some good ones. But as has been pointed out by Councillor Parker, there is a red particularly that's been there for a while, and that is around sickness absence. But I can assure the committee that we have support and management processes in place which will help staff back into work, and where suitable deploy them to alternative roles so that they can return to work within the ability which they have. And of course, as you said, Councillor Parker, sickness is a national problem. We've had a peer review this week, and we've had some sort of feedback on that. And some of the peer reviewers from various councils are saying we're seeing that across the country, and that is, the tail end of COVID, and also the fact that people are mixing more and are actually haven't had a cold or a serious cold forever, really during because of the COVID. I've got a cold for the first time for ages. So, but also some of those other problems which are more health, people's health being suffering as well. We have things in place to help our staff back into work. And I think the referral to the occupational health is now quicker for those that need it. And through the managers managing the sickness, we can ensure that the absence, the longer term absence, is minimised. And the council's achieved Thrive Foundation accreditation, which recognises the quality of our processes in supporting particularly health and mental health wellbeing. And that provides health assessments, wellbeing days, and other activities to help members of staff that may be suffering through mental health and health wellbeing issues. And we hope to increase that accreditation to a bronze accreditation next year. So hopefully members can be reassured, though that figure is again showing up as red, and it's not unusual in this sector, or as Councillor Parker said, in many businesses at the moment, and that the time of year approaching the winter as we were in this quarter we're looking at now, that we do have measures in place to try and ensure we get to where we want to be on sickness absence. Thank you, Chair. Willing to take questions.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I saw Councillor Waring indicate. Would you like to go first?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just returning briefly to the targets. I went through the report this morning, and as I said before, I think the layout and everything else is fantastic. It's easy to understand and so on. And generally speaking, the targets appeared to be, fairly realistic, I thought, until I got to page 29. And if you look at page 29, we've got a target where the first item is we appear to be consistently achieving 100%, and yet the target's 66. Now, in my opinion, if you've managed to achieve 100% for 2 years, a target of 66 is unrealistic. I don't know. I'm not saying that the target should be 100%, because obviously you can't achieve that forever. But if it was something like 95% or something, because you need to, if you're having a target, you've got to make sure that it's in some way challenging. And I would say that, you want something more like that. Similarly, and the second item, we're showing performance that's consistently under 5% from, the way I'm reading this, and yet we've got a target of 10. Now, I'm not saying we need to reduce it to a level below what we're achieving, but nevertheless, if we're going to actually set a target, then it should be something that is a bit more challenging. And I would accept that there may be other councils perhaps who don't achieve those levels. And in those circumstances, what we should do is we should show the national average or something and show it as that, so that we can celebrate the fact that we're doing better than everybody else or the majority of other people. But nevertheless, we're still trying to force our organisation to do better. We want to be doing better than everybody else. It's not a case of just bumbling along and saying, well, we're better than the national, so that's all right. And so I just think that, we should look at some of those targets more specifically, these items in relation to planning, and just maybe set something that's a little bit more challenging. Having said that, I think we can celebrate that, what we've achieved in the planning department is fantastic. I'm not belittling that in any way. I think that the achievements of the planning department have been remarkable over the last couple of years. But nevertheless, now they've got to that level of success, let's tell them that they need to stay there, The only other thing then was the litter. I just wondered where we're actually where we measure the litter issues, because I know there's some places in Kidsgrove that are worse than this appears to be, and I know we can't measure everything, but I'm just interested to know where we measure those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waring. Yes, and on litter, you've highlighted the only other red rated indicator that's in our report tonight. And speaking for myself as a very ancient member of the planning committee, I remember a time when we would not have reached those targets. Councillor Tagg, do you have an answer?
I think firstly on the planning point, it's a valid point. The indicators at the moment are nationally set in that area. So we keep bumping up on the 100% mark because that's the national metric really, but it's an interesting point. It's something through the One Council programme we need to consider, where if we're continually getting to 100% and being gold star, whether we can put resources into something else where we aren't quite reaching that and then dip slightly below and be more average or be just above average. So that's something we'll be using with the data we have now, and it's drilling down so much we can just switch a bit of resource from somewhere else, an admin resource into another area from planning to then get that area up to a higher than what it is at the moment. So, but these are the planning ones particularly are national, so we don't have any say in what they're set. We're just measured against them. As for the waste one, I think a valid point. I'm just looking, from my understanding, we have a sample of streets that are measured against a national detritus sort of measure or something, which we are measured against. So it's a standard, so you can measure across the country and be benchmarked. As you are on planning, you are on sort of street cleaning. Does that explain it, Chair?
I want to know what the national detritus standard is. That sounds like a wonderful thing. It's
Probably
something
not
like,
call that, but is it
something like that? Yes. Did that answer your question, Councillor Waring? Yeah.
We need to push people a bit, and if we're achieving something that's way above the target, then it's not an achievement to just stay above that target. You know, it should be different. And like I said, you know, if it is a national standard we're measuring against, then what we should do is actually say that, so that we actually know that it's not something that we're prepared to settle for necessarily. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beckley-Smith, does that answer part or all of the question that you posed about these, or would you want to ask that again about stretching targets and whether they're appropriate?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. As I made quite clear at the start, that I mean, we're looking for continuous improvement here, and that's what we've got to get. But on the other side is ensuring that the staff working within the system remain motivated. And so in terms of targets, the crucial thing is if you jump the target too much when everybody's been busting a gut to actually achieve it, then it can be demotivating. So I'm just asking really, in general terms, obviously you're aware of it, but how's that going to be handled? Thank you.
Thank you. I think I agree with you on the continuous improvements. That's what we want to do. And I think as Vanessa said, we're going to be reviewing these, aren't we, in the fourth quarter. I think it's again, as I went back to, I'll go back to what I said when Councillor Waring asked this question. There may be some areas because we've got limited resources, and we've got limited resources to target improvements, and we put them into areas where we are dipping below and get those up, where we might then have a less gold-plated service at the other end, like in planning, for example. So I think I'd make that point again, that continuous improvement is great, but when you have to spread that around to areas where we aren't doing so well, and to get that performance up as well. So, but if you'd like to add anything on that, Geordie.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to say as well, as Vanessa mentioned previously, we work with the staff to set some of these targets as well. So yes, the heads of service are responsible for their delivery plans, but they work with their staff very closely, and they understand what is possible with the resources we've got. The other thing is the improvements that we're making, the transformation that we're going to, again, is done with the staff. This is not imposed on anybody. So I would hope to think that that people would raise it if they felt these targets were not quite right. And we will continue to review these targets as we move through this cycle. So this is a new cycle. It's a new way of doing things. And if we're constantly seeing something that's off target on a report, then yeah, that raises the question, is that target right? Do we need to review things and move something slightly different? So that agile way of thinking and working is something that's running through all that we're doing at the moment. And hopefully that will keep the staff, motivated to both be empowered to make those suggestions, but also do their best and try and reach the targets that they themselves are part of setting.
Happy with that?
Thank you.
Excellent. Are there any further questions from members? Councillor Brockie.
I won't venture into philosophy, but it is difficult to measure a live snake. Human beings working in workspaces and that kind of thing are continually evolving in their skills, and as the lady over there said, we do have to review targets. So you've got targets, in a target being something you aim at, because once you hit it, it's no longer a target. It's then got to move away and do something else. I think the rhetoric of target setting, you know, I come from an educational background, so you can imagine how much I love it. I'm thinking mental health obviously is one issue which has already been addressed to a point, because there is provision for support for mental health. But the One Council strategy of multi-skilling people to cope with an awful lot of diverse jobs, if the training supports it, that's absolutely fine, because obviously economies have to be made. But my concern is that uncertainty about jobs, not just the motivation to find the targets, because, you know, as you said, there is consultation processes in place in all departments where people can discuss issues and maybe be supported if they're not meeting what they're supposed to. But it's just a little bit worrying that we're moving into a situation where things can be summarized like this. Nothing wrong with that. It's an illustration. There's a lot of management speak involved, and I'm sure the public will understand it, you know, because I'm quite a simple soul. I look at it and I understand it. That's to be welcomed. But the worrying thing to me is if you are setting targets on a national basis, litter being an example, or detritus or whatever it's called. I mean, we've got a lot of that in town ward. Do you average it out? You know, because there must be all sorts of places where it doesn't happen. And monitoring it must take an awful lot of staff time. And that's the other thing that concerns me. If you're saving money doing certain things, then you're obviously spending a great deal of it extrapolating information in order to put into there. I wonder whether there's a survey done on it. Plus, of course, the impacts on mental health and stress on workers who are being put into a One Council programme for which they may or may not have been adequately prepared. You know, the training budget, the mental health support budget, this thing, which is great, nothing wrong with it. Loads of people use it and it's very user friendly. But the amount of time spent, you know, it's constructing it in order to make it understandable, where simpler language and a simpler approach may do. I don't have the answer to this, which is why I'm asking people who know more about it than me. But the main issue with targets for me is the very fact that you can, if things aren't working out, vary them. And the moving snake thing wasn't a trivial comment, because the country and its economy and future-proofing things against financial pressures moves all the time. So to be honest, half of me wants to sit there and read it like a bedtime story, and the other half of me wants to throw it through the window every week and do another one. I get it, and I get the requirement to do it, and I also get the pats on the heads if it all works out fine. But I'd just like a little bit more explanation about how much staff time, effort and resources are being used to construct what is in effect a sort of leviathan of information that tends to hide the fact that people's bins are maybe not being emptied, or people are being forced to juggle information surgery in here, and they sit there and they come, and these poor guys on the desk are having to deal with a multiplicity of tasks. They know how to do it, but it's just the impacts, if you like, on the workforce that concerns me. So I shall shut up now.
Thank you very much, and never apologise for veering philosophical. We could all do with some more philosophy. Specifically in relation to the collection of data on litter, I know that we've changed the way in which we collect that data, and it might be helpful for us to know a little bit more about that one, as well as any general comments on Councillor Brockie's thoughts.
On that point, I think we can get that sort of information and share that with members. Obviously, I think Trevor Johnson will know a lot more about that and the team. But I think on the real point you make about that, are we just setting up a whole bureaucracy to collect figures and indicators and performance data. But I'm sure that's not the case. I know that's not the case, but I think in this new set of indicators and the way we can manipulate the information, it's so useful for the transformation team to be able to measure, you know, the progress we're making on our plans. I'm sure Georgie can add more to that.
Yeah, just a couple of points that I hope will reassure you. This, for one thing, this data set, this performance metric, actually it might not reassure you at all, is only part of the picture. So there's more work going on to collect information. But what the reassuring bit of that is, we are doing staff surveys, we are talking to people, what's going on, you know, talk to us about your experiences. Our previous 2 staff surveys were extremely positive about how people are feeling about working for a council. We've just been through a peer review this week, and the sort of the information that's coming out of that the staff are extremely positive about the sorts of things that we are doing. So yes, figures and numbers and charts, etc., give us a huge amount that we can drill down in, and we can make improvements, and we can work and we can be agile. But that's only a bit of it, because you've got to listen to people as well. But the second part, which around the building an industry in creating this data, actually something like this is an awful lot less resource intensive to create than the previous way of doing things. So a lot of our information around, for example, the bin collections, the litter, our reports that come through website forms, etc., we are building the ability to collect that automatically, rather than have somebody sitting there plugging in the numbers and rifling through bits of paper. So that's actually taking a lot of that legwork from the staff, so that frees them up to actually do the value added stuff that they want to do, that we want them to do. So it's 2 things really. One, we're talking to people and making sure people are all right. We'll have another staff survey this summer, I'm sure. And actually this way of collecting data is so much smarter that actually that concern, hopefully you'll be reassured that that's not what we're doing.
Thanks, that's very reassuring.
Good.
Thank you.
We are reassured. Thank you. Any more questions or comments? No, in that case, thank you very much for the data, and Vanessa, thank you very much for coming and giving us that introduction to it. You are very welcome if you want to stay for the One Council update, but you're very welcome equally to leave if you'd like to at this point. Okay, in that case, thank you very much. We'll move on then to item number 5, which is the One Council update. I'll ask Councillor Tagg to introduce it.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief update from me. Obviously, the One Council programme, as we've already discussed already on the performance days, is really important to this council in a number of ways. It helps us to make savings so that we can afford to do the things we want to do, particularly in the regeneration agenda, that massive programme we've got to take advantage of the money we've had from the government. And also it's developing our staff and better ways of working within the council, and also ultimately improving those services so that we improve these indicators even more. The presentation today is mainly on, which is in the packs, I think, isn't it, which Georgie's going to talk to, is mainly on the mobile multifunction teams. But last time we discussed this, we talked about the One Front Door, which is now fully in place, and the savings made and is integrated. And any members that were at the members event in January, remember we had a discussion when we had a presentation on One Council about the length of time that if somebody calls the council to get through to where they want to go at the end of it, and it was seen to be too long, I think, for more members. Since then, responding to that, the team have done some good work, conferred with me and Councillor Sweeney as well, and we've now got that a minute shaved off that, so it's a 42-second with chances of getting out to where you need to go. If you've got a county query, you go off to do that and know where to contact highways. If it's a housing, you get information about housing. But the main thing is it allows our residents to get to those services they want at the end. They're obviously offered throughout to go to the website where they could do it online, but ultimately they're getting to the person at the end where they need to a minute quicker than they were before. So we've really responded to what members said, and I think the residents will notice that outside. But that was just a really to show how we as members can influence this and really get things how we want it on behalf of residents, and that was embraced by officers, and we've done that now. But this presentation, which I'll hand over to Georgie now, is the latest update on the One Council and our award-winning One Council, because we received an award in the IESE Transformation Awards for One Council Transformation, our team, a bronze, which is really good, because the judges said that the One Council Transformation Programme continues to achieve successes in efficiency, cultural improvement, people-focused values and its services. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that intro. So we have spoken a few times over the past year or two around the One Council programme. So as Councillor Tagg helpfully said, this is the latest update around what we're doing. But as always, I like to just remind you about the programme itself in general and some of the things that we've already achieved. So the One Council programme has three main aims. We are supporting the provision of the quality services. That is not going to change in terms of our aims as a council. We make no secret of the fact that we are meeting financial challenges through this programme. So the programme is aiming to save money and actually use that money for the benefit of the residents, and to grow and develop our teams to make sure that we are supporting people to be able to do their best for the council, but also to progress and be empowered to make sort of long-term strategic decisions around how their working lives progress. So it's not just money saving, but equally it's not just about the people. It's all of those things combined, with an aim of actually improving things all around. We set up the programme, like I said, about sort of 18 months ago, coming up to 2 years now. And we set at that point a set of key principles that we would hold dear to our hearts throughout the programme. And they have proved actually to be exactly right for the purposes. So these principles were that we need to be more strategic. We need to make sure that we are aligning our council priorities and plans to what we're doing all the way through the organisation down to the boots on the ground. And we are seeing that through these through the work that Vanessa's doing with her strategic hub, actually translating some of those the council priorities into individual service plans, into performance targets, and we're looking at how all those things come together. We wanted to enhance our work in partnership, and again, our partnership work is extremely important to the council, and it's something that was recognised this week in the peer review as actually being very, very strong. We don't want that to change. We want that to keep going. We want to manage the demand, so making sure that we're not putting resource where it's not needed, but also actually enabling queries, questions, complaints even to be quickly managed without people having to approach us more than once. Efficiency and effective ways of working so that people aren't going around in circles and duplicating work. We know that we can actually do things cheaper and better if those processes are right and efficient. Digital delivery to support all of that. So, improving the website, making sure people have access to the right systems in their work. We remain customer focused, and you can see that through continuously adjusting what we're doing in terms of the customers. So Councillor Tagg's example there of making sure that the changes that we've made aren't actually negatively impacting on people. So when we hear feedback around waiting times on the phones, we'll change it. We are not fixed in terms of our delivery there. And the empowering people, so this comes back, Councillor Brockie, to people owning these changes and wanting to be part of them, and actually getting excited about them even. So with that people focus of One Council, one of the first things that we did was look at how we work as an organisation, so how the officers do their jobs and what was important to people. We did a number of focus groups at different places in the council. So we had manager focus groups, we had councillor focus groups, we had trade union focus groups, EMT had a focus group, and we all sort of put suggestions forward around what are we really good at? What could we do better? What don't we want to lose through all of this? So what is it that makes us special here at Newcastle? And we came up with a set of values that would all work together to create 3 values of empowering and enabling our staff, performing well and getting things done, and working together. And those 3 things are the things that really hold us together as a council and make our people. We measure performance, you know, thinking about these values now. We put them along our policies to make sure that these policies represent these values. So these are something that's running through everything that we do. And in line with that sort of cultural transformation, we had a specific work stream that we've set up to support well-being of our people, but also celebrate some of our achievements, look at mental health, for example. And that work has led to the Thrive accreditation that Councillor Tagg mentioned before, but it's also led to some new policies being brought into play. We've signed off about a year ago now the Dying to Work programme. We've put in some new policies around employee volunteering, all of this to sort of solidify and ensure that those cultural improvements, those values are embedded in what we do. To thank that group, they've created a video that just sort of summarises all of the fabulous things that they've done. And I'm going to try and see if I can share it with you just now. Let's have a look. Here we go. A very quick summary, excuse me. Very quick summary of a huge amount of work that's gone on in the teams in developing some of the cultural changes. And, you know, that video could have been 3 times as long. There's huge amounts of work going on. Let me just reshare the presentation. Okay, so this is a summary then of the operating model that we were looking to achieve through bringing in the One Council programme, with the sort of big blue building blocks at the top, which are some of the sort of larger pieces of work that we wanted to achieve. We've developed the strategic hub. You know, that's Vanessa's team now working on that performance framework. We're working on our internal support services. The customer hub is up and running. We've seen huge changes to the website and the ability for people to self-serve both internally and externally, and we're continuing to review our leadership and management skills. So those big blue ones are well underway, and the green boxes at the bottom are individual services working together. So the staff are involved in identifying which customer journeys are theirs, so which processes cause them the most difficulty, cause their customers the most difficulty, and how they can make those changes. So again, you can see, you know, we've done all of this work around the information advice and guidance, new website, new intranet, people can report things easier, and that will continue to develop as we go through the programme. We're an agile programme, and so we haven't put timescales to different elements of the services and their improvements, because the way we work is we go and work with teams, we work with services, and we explore what their difficulties are. Depending on what happens, then what they say, what suggestions they make, that then sort of informs how long that improvement might take, what interdependency there are with other aspects of the programme going on, how much work digitally it might take, and therefore how much resource we need to put in from an IT perspective. So the timeline is fairly nebulous in a way, but if you look at this, you can see that we're working with most of our services now in terms of making some improvements, and there are a few yet to be touched, but we've certainly got plans in place to address those and make sure that we're doing all we can across the services, so there's no one service sort of missing out on any of those. We are around about 77% complete overall in terms of the programme. Now, that's not a financial 77%, that's 77% of the work we've identified that we need to do to date. Now, that completion rate actually could go down if we identify more work that we could do, and we're sort of seeing new things pop up all the time, but at the moment it's looking very healthy. We are on track to deliver what we said we would, and in terms of the finances, you'll see a few slides down, we're very much on track in the financial support as well. So one of the big blue blocks at the top that we saw before was the mobile multifunction team. And this is what I wanted to sort of focus on this evening. We've heard a lot about the customer hub and the one front door, and that's one of the blocks, but this one is equally important. One of our challenges was around working across our neighbourhoods and town centres and thinking about effective solutions to problems that arise you know, out in the borough, and what we wanted to create and what we have created and continue to develop is a group of sort of multi-skilled field-based workers who are supported by the specialists sort of back at base, who can go out and solve a number of different problems that arise out there in the borough. Part of that is ensuring that they've got the right tools and the right skills, but also actually making those reporting lines easier, taking away some of the paper-based reporting, etc., making it all more straightforward, but also communicating well with each other and with partners to think about what are the common things that we all come across that we're looking to solve together. So to date, we have worked to group sort of environmental enforcement and community safety together into a single team. We're starting to work at that cross-skilling process, and we're working very closely with partners, Aspire, the police, many others, in terms of actually making sure that we're working together as well as possible, but each of us know what each other are doing, and you know, looking for the barriers and the pitfalls to working together and breaking those silos down. We're looking at continuing the training and coaching program around the operatives, developing and broadening their skills, providing people with qualifications, and really focusing in on that data to make sure that what we're doing is making a difference both to the people, but also then not burdening the staff as well. Looking at how we're sort of deploying people and the resource, and continuing that partner engagement, making sure that we're sharing resources where we can, that we're all singing off the same hymn sheet, and that our responses complement and coordinate with each other. We have got challenges with this. It's not straightforward. You know, people are raring to go with it, and actually sometimes we need to sort of, you know, put the foot on the brake a little bit in terms of getting it right first time. We need to make sure that you know, we've got the resources in place to resource the team, and the cross-skilling and that training takes time to embed and to learn. And what we don't want to do is overwhelm people by trying to get them to do too much at once. We need to really pace ourselves in terms of that. But actually we've got really positive partnerships going on. People want to make this work. And you know, that communication is really key there in terms of building that confidence with the working, so we can see the successes as we're going along with this piece of work. There's stuff still to do, so we will learn stuff as we go along. We will develop and we will change, and we'll keep having a look at what the information, both qualitative and quantitative, is telling us. We need to make sure that the budgets are right for the team, and I know Craig's team are working closely with MMF to make sure that we know what we need and when we need. We need to develop our policies and strategies and communication protocols with our partners, making sure that we know what fleet requirements we need, and making sure people have got the tech and the IT to make this work as smoothly as possible. And then some work around transitioning teams into other teams as well is probably needed moving forward, and we'll assess that as we go along. So we're not there yet, but we're making massive steps of progress. So finally then, one council wise and the financial savings, we initially had a target of 1.02 million to save. That was increased to 1.173 million, just because the finance team like to keep me on my toes. We invested 1.2 million into the programme as a one-off investment, but we're seeing recurrent savings. And actually, since this slide was put together, we've identified really where we're going to get that last 126 from, and so we're confident that this next year we'll meet those financial savings that we've said, and probably look to exceed them though, but don't tell anyone I told you that. And then just a shameless plug really, that we're all very proud of in the team. The team have worked so hard over the past 2 years, and really worked well together across teams, and because of that they're winners in the National IEASY Awards for transformation, which is a huge achievement for them, and I'm dead proud. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that very comprehensive report. Councillor Waring.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think this is really encouraging, and I think it is something that you should rightly be proud of, because I think that what you've done is taken in pretty much an entirely new approach to how everything works. And I think that the things that you've put in to look after the staff, and the way that you're actually approaching problems is really, really good. There's just a couple of little questions that I just wanted to ask you about.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, is there any scheme, this may be too old-fashioned, but years ago, companies used to have employee reward schemes for good ideas and things like that. And I just wondered if there was anything in, you know, the processes that allow for something like that. And the other thing is that you referred to the 70% completion. And the one thing that would be really important to me going forward would be where you add other things in, then that would perhaps be treated as phase 2 or something, so that I can still see where we are with phase 1. Because if we still keep showing 70% and we keep being told that it's because we've added more things in, it's not that I won't believe you, but I'd still want to say, well, what about the first lot? How have we actually finished those now? And I just think that it's good if those can be separate, not to a ridiculous, rate, but just so that we are able in some way to identify that. But yeah, I'm massively encouraged by this, so thank you.
Glad to hear you're encouraged. We have got tons of data that we can report on. So the 77% slide that you've seen there is but one of a whole range of metrics that we use to measure the programme. Some of those are snapshots in time and some of those are cumulative. What we also do is we have a very extensive benefit tracker where we measure improvements, not just financially, but in terms of time saved, etc. So there's a whole load of different metrics that we can do, and I can bring some more to show the group sort of another time if that's needed. Equally, I'm more than happy to sit down with groups of members and go through the information as well. I've forgotten the second part of your question now. Oh, the achievements. Yes.
Then actually the program, the level of completion we're at.
Yeah.
On the original program, and maybe going forward.
Yeah. So we have phased a couple of the elements. So in some of our reporting decks, we've got sort of one front door phase 1, one front door phase 2, and you can see that separately. And we can again sort of slice them up in different ways. In terms of the achievements for staff and the recognition, it's such a controversial one for the staff. When we've run our staff surveys, that was one of the things that people came forward and said, actually, we want to be celebrated for our achievements, we want to be recognised a bit more. And so being aware that means different things to different people, we went back to the staff and said, okay, so what would you like? What would you see as something that would really mean something to you? And we've had very little feedback around actually what would be good. Whether or not it's going to be a ceremony, an annual thing, I don't know, but we are going to do something. We've tried to do smaller things in the meantime whilst we plan something larger. So, for example, we've launched Castle News, which is a monthly sort of newsletter online. And in that, there's achievement sections, so teams are celebrated. We asked staff to bring forward ideas for achievements and celebrations for Martin's team talks, so he thanks people in those. And just this week actually we've put out a shout out form on the intranet, so if somebody's done something really helpful, even if it's just something quite small, like so and so could see I was having a tough day and really stood by me, then you can shout out to that person, and again that'll be reflected in either team talk or Castle News. So we're aware of that and we want to celebrate people's work.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tagg, do you have something to add?
Just to add, I think what you mentioned, Paul, is really relevant. That sort of data and drilling down into the data, and yet again we can use, I think, the members portal to begin to put some of that on there, and you'll be able to manipulate yourself. And also, latterly, we talked about the Castle News again, and that is uploaded onto our members area as well. At the bottom, you can click on it, and you see exactly what the staff see, and all of those achievement pages, and people joining the authority and people leaving the authority, isn't it? And just on that, it's the last day forever for Dave Adams today. He's left the council. Obviously, we'd said goodbye to him at the previous council, and today was his final day, so good luck to him. So he'll appear on the next Castle News after being at this council since 1988. He won't like us talking about him because he gets embarrassed, but I thought I'd just mention that.
Thank you, Councillor Tagg. Councillor Brockie, did you want to read this as a bedtime story or throw it out the window?
Without it. It's about these multi-skilled field-based enforcement operatives. Obviously, times have changed, and I don't see that it's a moral issue about multi-skilled field-based enforcement operatives, though it's a bit of a mouthful. If you went to the school careers officer and said you wanted to be one of those, you'd be well away, wouldn't you? My concern is that although the training is obviously going to be in place, I'd like some reassurance about the issue of protecting existing contracts if you're going to extend them. and obviously about the sustaining of employment rights of people. Are they going to be coerced into taking on these roles when they're already working? And more important for the public, the level of risk assessments. If they're multifunctional, multi-skilled field-based enforcement operatives, they go off and, you know, meet challenging situations, as I'm sure they will, otherwise there's not much point in having them. You've got to send them out there where they're going to, you know, be up to their elbows in it. If that's the case, then obviously there's going to be some cost attached to training, which I've already mentioned. And there obviously is also a question of protecting employment rights and contracts, because I'm assuming that people who are existing employees of the council will be upskilled in order to take on these extra roles, or that they will be advertised for and training given on the job, because it's a relatively new concept. And knowing the diversity of things these people are going to encounter when they're out there, what vehicles they will have, where they have access to, where they can park, a whole network of things that I'm sure has been considered. I'm not suggesting nobody's thought about it before, but I think we do need some firmed up information about what this is going to mean for employment rights and what it's going to mean for existing contracts, and whether there's any plans to get people to reapply for jobs, which of course has employment implications about the security of jobs, you know, which is obviously again going to cause mental health problems if people feel that they're faced with insecurity if they don't take on these roles. And of course, the risk assessments of the actual mechanics of going out there and doing things and encountering problems. The risk assessment has to match the kind of risk that they're going to be likely to encounter. It's a little bit like any form of sort of street policing or this kind of thing. You can't really quantify what they're going to come into contact with. Most of the time might be very mundane. Another time it might be something quite serious. So is there a sliding scale of how qualified the multi-skilled field-based enforcement operatives have to have in order to be those things in different places? It just feels like a spider's web of very complicated things involving human beings with flesh and blood. And training needs.
It is complicated. You're absolutely right. Which is why we couldn't just say, right, day one, guys, off your trot. There are absolutely risk assessments being undertaken to make sure people are safe and well at work, you know, absolutely paramount. And in terms of the training, some of this might be additional training, some of it might be broadening training. It's not always elevating people up to a higher level of skill. It might just be something a little bit broader. In terms of the change processes that we've got in place as well, you know, we absolutely do full consultation processes where necessary. It might not be necessary in these cases, depending on who's in post at any one time. We've also got some vacancies that we're looking to recruit to as well. So it's a combination of processes, but you're absolutely right. It is complicated. And we are aware of all of those issues that you've mentioned, but that's, you know, a very thorough run through of actually, yes, it's hard. It's really hard. But the team are working really, really carefully to make sure we get those things right.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Tagg, do you have anything particular to add?
Just think on this, you know, we're piling it, aren't we, in the town centre area, and that's the right really place to do it. I think it's in your ward, isn't it, as well, Councillor Barocchi? So I think if you want any further information, I'm sure Georgie would put in with probably Roger Tate, etc., who's sort of leading on this, will help you to get any more information you want. But I think for all other wards, I think if this model works, as we hope it will do, we've made a commitment as administration. Also, it's in our council plan to roll this out. But let's get it right first, isn't it? As you say, there's a lot of complications around this. There's no better place really where all those different complications come together than in the town centre. So I think that's the right place to do it. And I think more updates in the future will be coming from Georgie on this as we develop it.
And yes, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Well, benefit for the older members in this room. It's nice to see that the reporter has risen from the ashes in a new, modern times form in the Castle News. I look very much forward to reading it. But the question I have, Georgie, is where it says on your next steps to begin begin to transition licensing enforcement activities into the licensing team. Chair, am I allowed to ask what those activities will be?
You're allowed to ask. Councillor Tagg, would you like to answer or pass on to Georgie?
To Geordie for that. Geordie for that. Agreed.
Because the fact that we are working with different teams at once, what we are seeing is gaps of resource, gaps of capability, different bits that could improve different teams, you know, with one solution. So we're working with the licensing team as well as MMF at the moment. And actually what we're seeing is by moving some of the activity back into licensing, that actually makes things smoother and more straightforward in terms of customer you know, some of that work. So making sure that the specialist work is being done by the specialists, and actually the enforcement work is done, you know, by the people with those skills, and those are different skill sets. So it's just realigning the work so it's in the right place.
Nothing in particular dead to the licensing team then, it's just straightforward with every other thing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for the question and for the answer. Anything further for our leader and our officer? And if not, I'd like to say thank you very much for the update. As the leader suggested, we'll probably want to see a further update in due course. We don't currently have anything programmed into the work program, but perhaps a shorter report, because I can see a lot of our meetings coming up are going to be quite full. When do you feel an appropriate time would be for us to look again and to receive a further update? Because that's going to be the next item on our agenda.
Well, if you want it brief, I might not be the right person to come.
Apologies, then we'll have a really thorough report at your leisure. We'll make time for it, is what I'm saying, because it is an important program, and members are interested in the progress that's being made on it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I was probably thinking, you know, because this is also a key part of the budget setting process, isn't it? So when you come in the autumn time to look at the budget, it will be good to take a temperature on this again, because it will have moved on significantly by then. There will other things come into the programme. That 77% will have gone up, or it will have gone down because if more's been put into it. But we must find a way of looking at that. But I think it's probably then in the autumn when it'd be good to come back with an update. If you're happy, Chair.
Thank you very much, Leader. That's fantastic. In that case, that concludes item number 5. Item 6 is the work programme. On the printed agenda, our future programme appears at page 58. Our next meeting on the 26th of June, we are due to receive the Q4 Finance and Performance Report in its new format, and also an update on the commercial strategy. So those will be the 2 main items for our June meeting. Looking forward then to September, we are slated to consider the asset management strategy, the MTFS, and the next year's Q1 report. To that, we might consider adding then an update on the One Council programme. We'll play it by ear because we have got another meeting in between now and then, and we can think again about it if we find we're going to be overextending ourselves or pressed for time. But that is the work programme going forward. Item number 7 is public question time. Sadly, there are no members of the public. We've not been joined this evening by members of the public, and I've had no notice of any questions having come in. Item number 8 is urgent business. There is no urgent business that I'm aware of. I look to the leader and our officers, and I can see no urgent business flying from their fingertips. In that case, the date of the next meeting will be Monday, 26th of June, and it is now time for us all to be mobile and multifunctional and leave. Good night. Thank you very much.